Hmm.
Yes, the problem is my writing, but it doesn't make me wrong.
Yeah.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Uncodified. To tide you over before our democracy series is finished, today we are going to talk about the upcoming US election, how we think it's going to go, and what would happen if Trump won. So I'm going to hand over to my very capable co-host, Tjalle. Take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Samuel. Let's start off with a little recap of what Trump has done since 2020, from showing war plans with Iran to journalists and keeping top secret files in his bathroom, like any good American leader, to being found liable in a civil case of raping a woman, has been found guilty of trying to influence the 2016 election by paying hush money to Stormy Daniels, and of course the attempted coup in 2020. Sending a mob of white nationalists on Congress to disrupt the certification of the Electoral College. A mob that tried to hang his vice president, which might have caused slight problems in their relationship. Following which he was impeached.
A
Yeah,
disagreement, shall we say?
A mild disagreement in the classic Republican way. Because of these, he was impeached, and an impeachment that was supported by 7 Republican senators who voted to convict him, which is, the most bipartisan impeachment we've seen in a good long while. In conclusion, Trump should not be the nominee. I think, as we can try to be unbiased in this, but I think me and Samuel, so you do agree. I mean, this is a madman. This is like letting.
No, the thing is, in the left in American politics is like the Lib Dems in British politics, and therefore their right is like completely off kilter.
Yeah.
Try to be neutral in this is going to be difficult, but we're going to try to at least be analytical, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Somehow, Trump and Harris are still neck and neck in the polls in late October. Now, I don't think this is realistic. Trump lost the popular vote by 3 million votes in 2016 and 7 million in 2020. And this is before the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which cost the Republicans millions of votes in 2022 midterms. And a couple of polls have come up recently, putting Harris a few points ahead in some swing states. But for the most part, it's neck and neck.
This is all well and good. However, as anyone who knows the US electoral system, the popular vote doesn't really matter. What matters is the Electoral College, which is a system that gives disproportionate voting power to smaller states. As every state is constitutionally mandated to have 3 Electoral College votes, with a limit of 538 Electoral College votes overall. A vote in Wyoming, in this case, is worth 3 times a vote in California. In 48 states, if you win by 1 vote, you get all the Electoral College votes. Working a little bit like the first past the post system. Whoever you vote for, the votes for the losing candidates don't really matter anymore.
So the increasing polarization in the US means that in most states there isn't really a chance of the other party winning. Old swing states like Florida and Ohio have moved firmly into the Republican column, while the vote in the biggest electoral college state, California, was won by the Democrats last time by an insurmountable 30 points.
The Electoral College system has become harder for Democrats to win of late. Due to the 2020 census, the Electoral College map has changed to adapt to the changing population. So a whole lot of change. Democrat states like New York, Illinois, and California have lost college votes, as have states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, where they are expected to win. On the other hand, states that are guaranteed Republican or traditionally guaranteed Republican, like Texas and Montana, have gained Electoral College votes. The Democrats have made increasing gains in states like Texas, however, over the last few election cycles, and still have millions of votes in Florida somewhere. Probably in the swamps, with the votes around 5 points behind in each state at the last election. Barring a huge upset, these votes won't count, and the GOP will get their combined 70 electoral college votes from these 2 states.
So there are 7 states which are considered to be in play in this election: Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, with a total of 93 electoral college votes between them. 5 of these states have been won by both Trump and Biden.
Which shows how on a knife edge it is. Despite Biden's 7 million vote margin in the last election, for an electoral college tie, all Trump would have needed was 20,000 votes in Wisconsin, 10,000 votes in Arizona, and infamously, but obviously wasn't 11,780 votes in Georgia. With today's electoral map, however, Trump wouldn't have only tied, he'd have won. He'd have won the electoral college and the election. It is not only inconceivable that Kamala Harris wins the popular vote by 10 million votes and still loses, and she does not have anywhere near that sort of lead according to the polls. So we're going to have a look at what might be the deciding factors in each of these 7 states up for grabs. Starting with Pennsylvania with Samuel.
Thank you, Tjalle, and thank you for your patience in this bit that we're going to edit out later. Pennsylvania in the 538 model is the state in the center of the country's vote and will decide the election. In the west of the state, you have rundown industrial towns, which are largely likely to vote for Trump. Cities like Philadelphia and to a lesser extent Pittsburgh will vote for Harris. The working class voters that would have voted for Obama or Bill Clinton have become disillusioned with the economic system and see Trump as an anti-establishment figure. Harris holds out hope that the 800,000 strong Polish community will be upset with Trump's isolationism and potential appeasement towards Putin in Eastern Europe. Considering Trump won the state by 44,000 votes in 2016 and lost it by 80,000 votes in 2020, this might be a strategy worth pursuing. But like any other group in society, the polls aren't a monolith, and this group overlaps with the working class who are more concerned with domestic economics. I wouldn't feel comfortable making a prediction about the state one way or the other. Now, Charlotte's going to talk to you about Michigan. Take it away, Charlotte.
Yeah. All right. Michigan has historically leaned more strongly Democrat than most of these swing states. This is highlighted in the 2020 election and even more so in the last midterms. But with this current election, there is a new factor, the war in Gaza. The US government's unwavering support for Israel has had the effect of depressing Democrat support amongst the college-educated youth across the US, understandably so, with many potential voters thinking about not voting or voting for the Green Party. The events in the Middle East have also severely harmed Democrat support amongst Arab Americans. In 2020, Biden won 59% of the Arab vote. This crashed to 17% in October 2023, and now is split 41% for Harris and 42% for Trump, surprisingly. Michigan has, well, surprisingly, because, I mean, Trump is not going to be any better than bloody Harris.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Muslim travel ban for one in 2017 was its own thing entirely.
Yeah, this is important because Michigan has the largest Arab American population of just under 400,000 out of the 10 million residents of Michigan. Of course, this won't change the result by itself, but it's quite possible that Biden's support for the Israeli destruction of Gaza has cost Democrats the state of Michigan and its 16 electoral college votes.
North Carolina is a state that has only gone to Democrats once since LBJ in 1964, and that was Obama in 2008. However, Trump has only won the state by 1.3% in 2020, and it is possible that, like Obama, Harris can mobilize a significant African American and mixed-race vote in a way that the Clintons and the Bidens couldn't. But the thing that might really sway the vote is the Republicans' disastrous candidate for governor. Last month, CNN reported that the GOP candidate referred to himself as a black Nazi. He said that he would prefer Hitler in government to Barack Obama, and I quote, he said, "Slavery is not bad. Some people need to be slaves. I wish they would bring it back. I would certainly buy a few." This insane view on slavery from a black man in North Carolina is on top of his other broadly homophobic and transphobic comments. The Democratic candidate for governor has consistently had a double-digit lead, as high as 22 points after this news first leaked. If people are infused to vote against the Republican candidate for governor, they'll likely vote for Harris, perhaps enough for her to win the state, especially as Trump had previously endorsed the Republican candidate for governor and campaigned for him multiple times.
We're moving on to an even better state, the sunny Arizona, home of iced tea. Alongside the election, there is a referendum at the moment on abortion after its Supreme Court ruled that the 1864 law, which bans abortion in all circumstances except saving the life of the mother, should be implemented following the Jackson v. Dobbs decision. This was overturned in the legislature by the Democrats with some moderate Republican support. They do somehow still exist. It is still the case that the restrictions are quite harsh, very harsh, and so the question of adding a right to abortion into the to the state's constitution is on the ballot. We saw in the 2020, the word will be on screen, but I'm going to give my attempt at it, gubernatorial guber election in Michigan, which was held alongside an abortion referendum, that the issue mobilized votes for Democrats strongly. Across the country, Democrats held close seats in what was widely touted as a red wave that year. Normally, a president's first midterm sees a swing towards the opposition. In 2010, Obama lost 63 seats in the House of Representatives and 6 senators. In contrast, Biden lost 10 seats in the House and gained a senator. Even though a number of polls have shown Arizona narrowly in Trump's camp, the turnout for the abortion referendum may make the difference.
Yeah. So there isn't a lot to say about Nevada, other than that it was rather closely Democratic in 2016 and 2020, with roughly 2% of the vote in it. The polls in the last few days have averaged out being neck and neck at 48% each, but it seems that this is the case with a number of states, and I wonder if this means that the polling companies are hedging their bets. One thing to note recently is that 30% of the state is Hispanic, and Trump's made a few more disparaging remarks against Hispanic people. Who could have guessed? Maybe this will influence it.
Who could have predicted? So, on with Georgia. Georgia is considered amongst pollsters to be the most likely of these states to vote for Trump. He has been consistently ahead by a couple points, even though with some rather bad Republican candidates, pretty fucking bad Republican candidates, Democrats only won the Senate seats there after a runoff election. 1 point in Harris's favor is that Georgia exceeded its record in early mail voting for the first few days votes, and by the 23rd of October, 2 million votes had already been cast. In the last election, Fox News and other right-wing outlets put a lot of effort into discrediting postal votes as illegitimate. So Republicans are probably less likely, more distrustful of these postal votes, and it's more likely that a larger portion of these votes will be for Harris.
So we're moving on to Wisconsin. Wisconsin is rather like Pennsylvania and Michigan. They had all voted Democrat since 1992 until 2016. They're considered part of the Rust Belt with a disenchanted working class. Obama won the states by 14 points in 2008, but the last 2 elections in Wisconsin have come down to the wire, being won by the plurality of votes. When Harris took the nominations, he seemed to have a decent lead, but this has disappeared in recent days for the most part. It might be tempting to look back at the 2022 Senate election, where the Republican incumbent won, but he too only led by 50.5 to 49.5% of the vote, and turnout was significantly lower, so it can't be conclusive. It might be the case that the pick of Tim Walz from neighboring Minnesota as vice president might appeal as a fellow Midwesterner who spent a chunk of his career as a high school football coach rather than a coastal elite. That would have been Harris's hope. The state legislature has a Republican supermajority, while the Democrats control the governor's mansion and have a liberal majority on the state Supreme Court. It is the ultimate purple state in this election, and the vote will be in the tens of thousands, if not in the thousands, on who will win.
I would just like to give my personal opinion on Tim Walz. I think he's being an ex-teacher, he's a good guy. I mean, he's a very good choice for VP compared to J.D. Vance. He was a nutter, and really doesn't have very strong principles. Tim Walz, I think, will do a lot for Kamala Harris's campaign.
One thing we have to consider is, will race play a part in this election? Is America still racist and sexist enough to choose the man whose own chief of staff and 4-star general, John Kelly, called a fascist over a mixed race woman? And with how close the scales are, you don't need a whole country to be racist. You only need 10,000 people in each state, and that's the election gone. So what do you reckon, Tjalle?
Well, I reckon there's more than 10,000 racists in these states in America, to be honest.
I'm saying it's what you need, not how many there are.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing. They've got plenty more than what they need. I think to the first one, is America still racist? Yes. Sexist? Yes. Will they be willing to choose a man who is a fascist over a mixed race woman? Yes. That's the long and short of it. They've got a lot of problems, deep-seated problems that they resolve. I think those problems stem from economic difficulties. I mean, look, Biden has spent a lot on infrastructure. He's spent a lot. The economy is doing better than most European countries, frankly. However, being, can't put your finger on it. There's something to do with the economic system or something, but the wealth doesn't go down to the people, and people will still feel the squeeze no matter where they are. And that will, of course, people go for outlets, and Trump is the perfect, figure to give, direction to that anger, and that direction is, fed into this, into the racism, sexism that already exists in American society, but brings it up to the front, and makes it part of the election.
So, from my point of view, Harris should be winning by a landslide, if only because Trump has destroyed every convention in the American system and has done things in his personal life that should pull his socially conservative base, like cheat on his wife while she was pregnant with a porn star. Which, if any other US president had done this in the last 100 years, he would have never been elected. He's been found liable in the civil case of raping E. Jean Carroll. Again, in any other election. And I think this does make the US seem really misogynist. And if Dick Cheney, who's responsible for the Iraq War, is saying no, Trump has gone too far and voting Harris, how far has the American right really gone from the day of the neocons?
There isn't. I mean, there isn't. There is another way of looking at that Dick Cheney bit, which is, Harris just then looks more like an insider, like someone who is comfortable with Dick Cheney. Though I remember, I think her office or she responded saying she didn't need Dick Cheney anywhere near her. And
Trump has consistently demonized and otherized Latino people, saying Mexicans are rapists and murderers back in his first campaign all the way through to last weekend. Where a speaker at the Trump rally in Madison Square Gardens called Puerto Rico an island of floating garbage. But Trump's support amongst Hispanic voters has been increasing over the last 8 years, not going down.
Adding on to this, Trump has has a pretty clear historical record of racism towards African American community as well, supporting and campaigning for the death penalty for the Central Park Five, challenging whether Barack Obama was an American citizen, calling African countries and Haiti shitholes, and his extremely militarized, militant opposition to Black Lives Matter protests, immortalized in that walk across to the church across the Capitol.
He just kind of held up a Bible. It was like, "Hi, I'm here." And the guy, and the poor Vic is like, "I do not want this. Why is he here?"
Yeah, like it's a complete insane moment. Like that's stuff you would see in an autocracy. Yet, despite all of this, Trump's support amongst young African American men is increasing. The African American vote used to be almost unanimous for the Democratic Party, hovering around 90% and sometimes even more. But since 2016, the black vote for Trump has doubled from 8% to 17%. And that I think, would require a lot of analysis on what's going on there. I mean, I would just say, as a personal thing, I think Trump represents this very clear do-it-yourself, individual responsibility kind of capitalist man. And as people in society go up, you get sort of the lower middle classes, or lower white collar workers, and families who have this new mentality, which is like, we build ourselves up, and Trump is telling them, yes, it is on your responsibility, and that has an appeal to it. That's Trump's entire sort of personality, and that might have that appeal for people sort of in that weird place in society where they're no longer blue collar, they're going up to white collar, they're trying to find an identity, a place, and that his message can be appealing.
So the question of why the election is so close is also very intriguing when the American economy is doing so well. The recovery especially when you consider the recovery from COVID and the shocking oil prices following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the Suez Canal closure in 2021 did not help the overstretched supply lines. The US GDP has been growing on average 2.85% every 3 months since the third quarter of 2022, compared to Britain in the same period, which has grown on an average a minuscule 0.15%, basically nothing. Inflation in America was never as bad in the last few years as in most of Europe, and it's rather low now. Biden has invested heavily in infrastructure projects to the tune of $1.2 trillion, creating plenty of construction jobs in railways, in communication technology, electricians, water sanitation. He also invested $53 billion through the Chips and Science Act to return manufacturing to the US in semiconductor industry. While the ambitious Green New Deal did not get through Congress, the Biden-Harris administration has been pushing investment into the green energy sector. All said and done, compared to the rest of the world, including China and Europe, the American economy is booming. but the Americans don't seem to have noticed. And maybe it's because of the extreme wealth inequality in America, because those people who are seeing the price of petrol higher than it was and still don't have healthcare for whatever reason, and just can't afford day-to-day expenses, despite Mississippi, the poorest state in the US, having a higher GDP per capita than most European states. There's a real problem of wealth inequality, and I think that really plays a factor. In fact, despite the American economy doing brilliantly, people still feel the pain.
Yeah, people do feel the squeeze. I mean, you can have the best GDP in the world, but it doesn't mean that the money trickles down, or the money is that, fairly distributed amongst the population. And America is just one of those countries where the inequality is completely unreal. So doesn't matter how well the sort of the macro is doing, the micro reality of families, of people, of towns and cities is not reflected in the GDP. I also like to say, I think it was a great advertisement for the Biden-Harris campaign. You did that. It read like a campaign video. $1.2 trillion invested in the sector creating construction sector.
I mean, it has to be, because the polls are so close. The American people clearly don't know all this stuff, so they must be told.
No, I mean, if we can convince at least a couple people to vote for not the fucking fascists, we had some good effect.
We'll get to Wisconsin. It's that close. We can get to Wisconsin.
I think we'll have to do another video where we target Wisconsin only. We just really bombard Wisconsin with
no Packers. Wear the cheese hats. Huzzah!
Samuel Rogers YouTube shorts, TikToks.
I believe you wish to talk about the oligarchy in the US media.
Yeah. It's also true that there is an oligarchical control over much of the U.S. media, in addition to the already oligarchically controlled media by Murdoch in the Fox News. They the last big thing we got from them is that they had to pay over $787 million. That's a lot of goddamn money to Dominion voting systems for spreading misinformation about the last election. So in this election, we are seeing massively again the influence of billionaires, and specifically, a Washington Post had written an additional an editorial endorsing Harris, only for Jeff Bezos' owner to pull it and announced no endorsement. In today's Standard Times, Evening Standard of the 31st of October, it had the official Washington Post thing, which is we endorse no candidates, blah, blah, blah. Some evidence is already in the media. More seriously is Elon Musk, who's been fighting his Twitter campaign, and his ownership of Twitter has led to the amplification and spread of right-wing voices and views, only enhanced by the algorithm, including his own increasingly more insane tweets, which are appearing on everyone's fucking feed. He's also started a lottery of $1 million a day for people who sign up to a Trump-supporting super PAC in swing states. The difference between this and paying people to vote is a matter of nuance. It is almost certainly illegal. It is. I mean, he's literally giving money for people to sign up and people to vote for him.
Well, the thing is that today he was actually called to come before court over this, and he refused to show up. Like, that's something that happened between me writing the script on Monday and us recording now on Thursday. Like, this is getting worse. But the point I would like to make is, like, if Trump wins by the narrowest of margins, Harris might actually have grounds to contest the election based on this act of bribery, which is not good for any of the US system at all.
No, I mean, look, this is already a narrow and contentious election, and if we get to the point where either party win narrowly, I mean, look, America is famously a big country with more guns than the population has hands. So.
Not than hands, but more than heads.
No, I would just like to say also as a last point after this, following up from this, I mean, American elections are kind of decided more on vibe of candidates. Policy takes about 20% of the interest, to be honest. If you look at the statistics, I mean, I'm basing this off the Evening Standard statistics. I read on the way. I read on the train back here.
So you're taking your advice from George Osborne. This is a change of pace.
I thought it was quite interesting because it really is the election most based on vibe. I mean, a lot of Trump voters don't believe he'll do half the things he says he'll do. They just don't give a fuck. They just they want him in. It really
So now
is.
So now we've moved away so far from the script. I don't know where it even is anymore. Let's actually discuss who we think is going to win. I'd like to think that Harris would win, and I think the chance that the polls aren't willing to call it in case they're wrong. And some polls have come up in the last couple of days which have taken early voting into account, and they seem to put Harris ahead in the popular vote by about 4 points. But as we explained, it doesn't really mean anything. I think it's going to be foolish and arrogant of either of us say who's going to win the election. At the time of writing, it's possible that there's going to be a repeat of 2016 where Trump's wins the Electoral College, assuming the poll are inaccurate. But we're talking about leads in the individual states, like less than the percentage point in these polls, which is completely within the margin of error. Most polls have a margin of error of about 3 points. I think that it might be possible that Trump blew it with the Madison Square Garden rallies, famously the place where the Nazis protested in 1939. Not the best place to pick, especially because of that comment about Puerto Rico being an island of garbage, because it's just in Pennsylvania, 470,000 people of Puerto Rican descent, and broadly, 30% of the states of Arizona and Nevada are both Hispanic. But I don't know if it may be even an October surprise. Probably not any more impact than the Access Hollywood tape, which didn't make a difference in the end. But no matter who wins, Trump will claim victory. What do you think, Tjalle?
I mean, we are looking at two parties. One where Republicans win despite Trump, and his constant sort of going after people who could vote for him. And we have I do not know too much about Kamala's platform besides that the alternative to her is who she calls a fascist. Yeah, I see him as a fascist. It's one of the few things I agree with her about. So I mean, it really is unclear, and I'm part of me is glad that the pollsters are not really calling it either way. It keeps it close, and that to me is positive because it incentivizes the Democrats to really take it seriously and get people out to vote. It incentivizes Democrat voters to go out there and vote. And it will be for the Republicans as well, and we'll see how. I mean, we'll see what kind of stuff happens. I mean, last election, I know we had there was several incidents at voting booths. We'll see what happens. I mean, but like electoral, it's going to be a tense election, and we I hope that the closeness really incentivizes people to vote out. I mean, it's hard. I can understand that it'll be hard for a lot of people to vote for a Democrat Party that has these pretty hard support for things like Israel. Because again, there's a lot of students, there's a lot of ethnic minority people who will find it hard to accept voting for.
The thing is, if you vote for the Green Party out of principle, you get Donald Trump in, and I think because we've basically said it's too close to call, we should at least have what's going to happen. We should probably lay out the apocalyptic scenario that what happens if Trump wins. So let's move on to that, shall we?